Hi, everyone. You're listening to Focused Faith Podcast with Carrie Powers. And thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I have a treat for you today. I have the lovely Rachel Rader with us, and she's going to share her story of how the Lord really called her and Jeff into this crazy journey of adopting children out of the foster care system. So Jeff and Rachel have a total of 6 kids total, 5 kids that live with them. Right now, they call Sacramento County home. And apparently have been there for 7 years already, which I'm not sure how that happened. So I'm thinking like 3 or 4. And then she was like, no, it's been 7. So wow. Because they call Montana home. So that's really where their heart is, but they're residing here for now. So this is where God has planted them, and they have decided that they're going to bloom where they're planted and really take in children into their home. So it's just an incredible story. And I just was really excited that Rachel said yes to this invitation. Why don't we start, Rachel, why don't you just kind of give us a background a little bit on really why you and Jeff decided to really do this crazy thing and take in children into your home.
So we moved out here because of the military. My husband was in the Air Force for 20 years, and it was just my husband, myself, and our daughter Ashley living in at the time we had a decent sized home. It was 4 bedrooms, 2 bath, and I was just kind of doing side jobs here and there working, and Jeff was doing the Air Force thing. But we joined a church, and that church did a lot of outreach into the public, and we met a couple different families there that ended up being foster families. And so
Okay.
we got to know them. And Jeff and I kind of took that information back from him, and I was like, oh, well, I want to adopt a kid. And Jeff's like, I don't want to adopt a kid. I just want to foster kids. And so we kind of sat on it for a little bit, and we just didn't feel like we were ready to take those steps. And then we just kind of felt like God was showing us more signs. We'd be driving down the road and we would see a billboard about the statistics of how many kids versus in the system versus how many foster parents there were. And we'd hear, things on the radio about the same thing. There was, I'd want to say maybe it had been a state adoption fair that was going on in Sac one day when we were driving that we had heard about. So we decided to talk to those friends again and then just see, what all those steps were. And so we ended up getting licensed to a private agency with the pure intention of just fostering children. We wanted to bring children into our home, show them what a healthy marriage looked like, take them to church, introduce them to God, and show them what we considered a normal functioning family, and just give them some security and just comfort them during their times of being in foster care.
Right. Okay. And so
Yeah.
then you started to see kind of this prompting and feeling like maybe that this is what God was wanting you to do.
Yeah.
How was
And
that process? I mean, how was the process to really get started in fostering children? Did you find it to be complicated, or what did that look like for you guys?
so we got licensed through a private agency instead of going through a state agency. For our reasoning was we wanted a buffer between us and the counties. And that's what our social worker does for us. So we got licensed through El Shaddai Family Foster Care Agency,
Okay.
and we had to go through a home inspection. We had to go through a background inspection. Um, and then, we had to have she also talked to Ashley to make sure, like, it was a whole family thing.
Right.
um she came to us with we got to pick the ages of children that we wanted, what type of behaviors we were willing to accept, which was nice because then we're not getting a phone call like in the middle of the night from a stranger, asking if we'll take a kid when they call our social worker and she's like yes or no. um
Right.
so initially we were just taking children younger than Ashley, and at that time she was 11. So
Okay.
nobody older than her, and just short-term care, which was 3 to 6 months.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's how it started anyway, was
Mhm.
just okay. How did it go from the start and now where you're looking at now with an let's see what you've adopted a total of 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, um, again, this is a God thing. The day she brought me my license, she brought me 2 children. I got brothers, in our first set, and they initially were supposed to be with us for 6 months. And about 3 weeks into their, stay with us, we got a phone call saying that their grandparents had been approved for, um, family care, which is awesome because it
Yeah,
just gives, puts them back in their family, and it gives the family a better chance of reunification.
totally.
And I still talk to those 2 kids. They're doing amazing.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
so we got to keep them for Christmas, which was their first real Christmas they had had with a tree and parents and presents and
Oh,
that type of thing. So which was awesome. And I was pretty devastated when we got the call that they were gonna leave. So
yeah.
I was in their room packing up their stuff, and I got a phone call from my social worker. And she's like, "Hey, I just got a phone call from the county, and we have a baby, and he was born at 32 weeks. He was born tox positive, which means he had drugs in his system, and he needs to be placed with a foster adopt family." And she's like, "I know we haven't talked about adoption,
Oh.
but," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So you have about 15 minutes, honestly, from the time you get that phone call to talk to your spouse or do whatever, which I called Jeff, and then you have to call him back and say yes or no. And so ultimately I was like, "Yay, it's a baby. I prayed for a baby. I wanted a baby." And Jeff's like, "I don't want a baby." And no. And so ultimately what we decided was we were going to take him, help him through whatever he needed help with because he was premature. He did have drugs in his system. And then let them find him a healthy home was originally what he had said. um, so these little boys had left my home the day after Christmas. And then on the 27th of December, the judge signed the emergency order for Jeff and I to go meet him. And this is it's an amazing thing that happened because he was in protective custody. There was no record of him on the books at the hospital, and we had to go to one of the hospitals in Sacramento.
Okay.
Huge hospital. Jeff and I never been in downtown Sacramento. Never been to this hospital, nothing. And we were going there with very limited information. No paperwork yet on him or anything like that. So we went in, we stop at the desk and we're trying to tell them we're there for. And they got kind of confused and they sent us up to this floor that ended up being the PICU, which is like where the toddler kids that are sick go. I think I'm
Oh,
saying great. Like once they leave the hospital and come back, then they go to this other unit, not the NICU.
gotcha.
Um, they didn't have any idea what we were talking about. They're like, "We don't know. You don't have a name. We don't know who you are." I was getting very, very discouraged. I was crying.
Oh,
And Jeff just kept telling me, he's like, "Just keep praying." He's like, "Just keep praying." He's like, "We'll get through this. We're gonna get through this." He's like, "If it's meant to be, we will find this baby."
yeah.
And this nurse who saw me crying in the hallway came up and she's like, "Can I help you guys?" And so Jeff told her again, we're like on our fourth person. Like, we got
Wow.
a phone call. We're supposed to be here. And she's like, "You know what?" She's like, "Let me see if I can help you." And so she took us through this back area of the hospital where only doctors and nurses get to go. She took us on this private elevator up to the floor where the NICU was. As we stepped off the elevator, one of the neonatologists was standing there, and also the social worker for the hospital was standing right there. And she's like, "I think this family is looking for you." And she introduced us and she goes, "As a matter of fact," she goes, "I have the papers right here that have your names on them. I was just talking to the doctor about it."
Wow.
So we got to go meet Hunter.
Yeah.
Um, we named him Hunter. They referred to him as just baby boy and then what his mom's last name was. And we sat with him for a while. He was in, I don't know if you've ever been to it. It's called a lockdown part of a NICU. It's a very sad, sad place for babies. There's nobody back there besides the nurses. These are kids that are taken into like CPS custody, as they're born.
Yeah.
There's no pictures on the wall. It's just he was just back there in a little incubator, just him and a metal folding chair.
Just really sterile environment.
Extremely sterile.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so that was the start of our journey with him. And it
How
was
big was he, Rachel, if he was born at 32 weeks?
32 weeks. He was born at 4 pounds, 3 ounces and
Wow.
16 and a half inches long.
Oh,
And he was born with 5 different drugs in his system.
wow.
Yeah. He
Mm.
had meth, heroin, cocaine, codeine, and marijuana in his system when he was born.
Oh, poor little baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you met him.
Yes.
And then Jeff's plan of maybe just, having him for a little while did not seem to pan out then.
So the minute I held him, I knew like that was my son. Like actually Jeff took a picture of me the first time I held him, and it's one of my favorite pictures of me, and I've got my fingers on his cheek, and I knew. But Jeff was very hesitant because he was so small and he had 0% body fat on him. He was just skin and bones.
Yeah.
Um and he had tubes hooked up to him because he was a preemie. So it took a little bit longer for Jeff. They ended up transferring him to a different hospital so that he didn't have to be in the lockdown part of the NICU. We changed counties.
Oh,
So he was able to go to a different hospital and be in with all the other babies. And it was amazing how much better he did
oh,
there with all that interaction. Those nurses could take him out of his incubator and hold him for, like feeding times and that type of stuff.
yeah.
I was there every day from 6 a.m. until about 10 p.m. And I was extremely spoiled by those nurses because of the situation that he was born into. They let me hold him all the time.
Yeah.
And usually when you're in the NICU, you get to hold your baby when your baby's feeding, and then you change your baby, put your baby back. Um, so I want to say we were about 5 to 6 days into our NICU stay, and Jeff came back from a hunting trip. And Hunter was just getting ready to start taking bottles. And I fed him one earlier that day. And then Jeff came and he fed him a bottle that day. And that was the day that
That was it, huh?
was the
That's
day.
all it took?
Yeah. Yep. That night, Jeff decided that when we brought him home and we introduced him to our family, we were gonna name him what we want to originally name him, which was Hunter Allen Rader.
Aw.
Um, yeah. And so that was it for him. We were hooked after that. His adoption went fairly easy. He was a foster adopt. State adoptions took care of it. It took about 17 months from start to finish.
Okay.
But that's just because there was no fighting from the other side. His mom knew, what
Right.
was going to happen. I think the longest thing was we didn't know who the father was, so we had to go through like all the paper publications and that type of
Oh,
stuff.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because terminating parental rights is not an easy thing to do.
No, it is not. And with my other kids, it was definitely difficult.
Yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
Hunter's adoption was pretty easy, um, as far as
Yeah,
the process goes.
probably the best case scenario with a baby, really, and
Yes.
that whole process. Yeah, I'll have to say, and Rachel, if you're open to it, I would love to post when we're done, and when this airs, I'd love to put some pictures up on Facebook so everybody can take a look at your
Oh,
amazing family.
absolutely.
Because I have to say, and we talked about this, is Hunter looks exactly like you guys.
He does.
It's amazing. He really that you would never know he's not yours for sure. Like
Right.
he really
Yeah.
was yours. He really was yours. I mean,
Yes.
you knew it the minute you walked in that room. You had
Mhm.
that instant mother bond with this little guy, and that's
Yeah.
just so incredible. But
Yeah.
take us through the journey with you the other 3 that you adopted are a sibling group, correct?
Yes. So Michelle, Paloma, and Jonathan, they were a sibling set of 3. They're actually total, there's 5 of them together in their sibling set, but we had 3 of them placed with us.
Okay.
Um, so Michelle was a teenager, and originally we weren't taking teenagers. So we got Paloma and Jonathan as an emergency placement. They had to be removed from the foster home that they were in.
Okay.
And Michelle was in a foster home by herself, and then the other 2 were in a foster home together. That was done by their social worker. They placed them that way because of behavioral issues and that type of stuff that they'd had in the beginning.
Mm.
So we took Paloma and John in. We had a full house. We had other kids there, plus we had Hunter and Ashley, but those other kids were getting ready to leave. And so at this point, the Michelle and Paloma and John had reunification. They were in the process of reunifying with their parents.
Okay.
So they had visits once a week at CPS. And so we would go for those visits, and they'd visit and, come home and stuff. And one day Paloma asked us when those other kids were leaving, she's like, "Can my sister come and stay with us?" And Jeff and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, "Oh, like that's a teenager. That's another girl. That's like a lot of what we weren't ready for." Um, So we talked to our social worker about it. Again, she is absolutely amazing. Um, and we asked her if she thought that it would be a good fit and how she thought that this would look and everything. And she thought that it was worth a try. Um, just because the kids had been through so much. My kids have been in foster care. They were in foster care from the time Jonathan was 2, and he came to me when he just turned 6. They've
Wow.
been in and out of foster care.
So
Um,
for 4 years, they were in and out of foster care before they came to reside with you guys.
yep.
Wow.
And so they came to live with us, and they were with us for their 6 months. And somehow the court gave the parents parental rights back. And so that was hard.
Yeah.
We didn't think that they would get their parental rights back because the kids had already been taken away 3 times.
Wow.
So we prepared for that journey. And we packed them up and we took them to their parents and we said our goodbyes. And we prayed over the kids and, to keep them healthy, keep them safe. And I prayed that I would see them again. I didn't care how, like if they came to live back in the county or if they came over for dinner, I just didn't care. I just wanted to see them again. And I'll be super honest with you and tell you when they left, like my heart was broke. Like
Sure.
I I didn't take a kid. I mean, I got phone calls right as they were leaving, and I couldn't do it. It
Mm,
took me about a week. And then Jeff told me, he's like, "You got to pull it together. We have other kids that need our help. Like, we need to keep going."
mm.
Um, and at that moment in our lives, we just bought a bigger house
Well, that was
to,
convenient.
to accommodate all of these kids. Um, so my kids went with their biological parents. They were there for 4 months and they got taken again.
Wow.
And CPS came to, not CPS, their social worker came, told our social worker they were coming back in the system. And she called and there was no question. My husband's like, "I want my kids back." He didn't even ask me. I'm sitting here doing this because our house was already full of kids and we're taking 3 more kids. But, we'd already had kids who had reunification dates and, that were already set to go to other homes and other counties and stuff. So we knew that it would eventually die down. But when they came back to us, we had a total of 8 kids in our house.
Wow.
And we did
How
that.
do you
I mean,
transport 8 kids?
so
You
at
have,
that
like, a
time,
passenger van or, like, what?
I had a minivan. But we didn't, all my kids, I was super lucky the area that we live in, all my kids were able to go to school out there.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, and when you have a family that big, you don't really go out and eat. You
Right.
definitely cook at home and you buy in bulk. So yeah,
Well, yeah. How could
yeah,
you
and it was
even
only,
not buy how could you'd have to go to Costco. Costco would be your only place that you would shop.
yes. I'd go between
Wow.
Sam's Club and Walmart all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So they came back to us and it was a long process for them. We had to go through the termination of parental rights. The parents tried to get them back. The parents tried to appeal. They didn't have any family that could take them. And the closer and closer we got to the termination of parental rights, CPS had to have a permanent plan in place for them. And so ultimately the kids asked if they could stay with us.
Oh,
And of course we said yes. And we sat down as a family and we included, my stepdaughter in this decision as well. Just to let them know, like, hey, if you guys are going to be a part of our family, this is what it's going to look like.
right. Right.
So yeah, that was a long process. That was a long, hard process because they still, even though we knew that they were going to terminate parental rights, my kids still had visitation with their biological parents until the rights were actually terminated.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
So
find it surprising, Rachel. I know there's a lot of things, I'm sure you could speak to that too, but, and I know there's and the system is not perfect, right? It's far from perfect. I mean, there's a lot of people who dedicate their lives to the service of these children, and so that they're amazing, but I think about the fact, like, you're in this situation and those parents have lost their children so many times, and yet they still have the right. The children don't have the right to say, "No, I
right.
don't wanna go to this visitation." The parents still have that right. It seems a little surprising to me
It
'cause
it is surprising. Since I had the older children in this scenario, My girls were actually old enough to decide whether they wanted to go to the visits or not.
Oh, good.
And sometimes they went, sometimes they didn't. But the three younger kids didn't have Jonathan and then their other two siblings. They didn't have that right at the time. So,
Yeah.
and that's hard, because sometimes parents show up and sometimes they don't show up,
Of
and sometimes the
course.
visits are good and sometimes the visits are bad. So it's always,
So why would you put a child through that after they've been through what they have continued to be? It's just,
yeah,
I know.
it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to sit back and watch. It's even harder when you know that you're trying to make these children a part of your family. Like it's
Absolutely.
not a temporary thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, uh, what you've done is amazing. And I know you probably hear this, but I mean, it really truly is. And it absolutely is 100% God all over the place. I
It
mean,
is.
when you look at the New Testament and Acts at the start of the church, God designed the church to care for children that
Mhm.
didn't have parents to care for them. And the church has not stepped into that role of really caring for these kids. And so the state had to get involved, because if the church wasn't going to do it, somebody has to do it.
Right.
So the fact that you guys have done this is it's a tremendous testimony to the love of God and really what he's done in your guys' life and hearts, and just amazing the expansion that he does in the heart, to include
Definitely.
all these extra kiddos, right?
You know, I mean, it's definitely, God definitely changed our heart posture on all things kids. I think that if Jeff and I could have had more children, we definitely would have, but we were blessed with Ashley. Um, we didn't, I mean, we thought that we were happy, just the three of us and, the four of us when my stepdaughter came. But honestly, people tell me all the time, they're like, how do you do this? How do you raise this many kids? How do you, I will tell you this, that it just works. It's God 100%.
Right.
You know, they're on a schedule. They know what their expectations are. God has provided us with a wonderful home. My husband and I have great jobs, and I have six amazing children
Right.
that I couldn't ask for anything better or different.
Well, exactly. And I think that this just came to my mind, but remember when I was shortly after I had moved to Chico. So I moved to
Mhm.
Chico with my kiddos in gosh, when was that? July 2015.
Yep.
So then you reached out to me, I think, and was like, "Hey, I'm just south
Yeah,
of you."
I was an hour away. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and you and Ashley came and we met
Yep.
and we had dinner and we had ice cream. Just had a really fun time of kind of reconnecting. And I remember at that dinner, because you were like, "No, Jeff and I can just have Ashley and we have I'm sorry, and your stepdaughter. I forgot her
Her
name.
name's Jordan.
Jordan. Yes, Jordan."
Yep.
And but you were like, "Yes, it's just the four of us." And you, I think at that point you basically just said, "I mean, I would adopt, but who knows what that's going to look like," that kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
and then here we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And now you
Yep.
have six.
I do have six.
You have to do the rundown. You have to do the rundown for everybody on their ages.
Okay, so I have 18, 17, 16, 15, 9, and 4, and all of those teenagers are girls.
That's amazing.
You
It really
I've got,
is. 18,
yeah,
17.
so that's Michelle and Jordan, and then
Okay.
Flo and Ashley are 16 and 15.
So, and not
Um,
only all teenagers, but like boom, 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 boom. Like
they're actually all born in the same years. So, Jordan and Michelle, Michelle was born in the beginning of 2003. Jordan was born
okay.
at the end of 2003. Paloma was born in 2005 in the beginning, and Ashley's born at the end of 2005.
Wow.
So Jordan has her driver's license already. Michelle and Ashley are in driver's ed right now.
Okay.
Paloma has no interest in driving, and my insurance is okay with that.
Well, listen, Logan just got his driver's license this week, and I'm excited about that, and I'm terrified all at the same time, because it's great because I'm not having to run him back and forth to all the places he needs to be. However,
How's your
our
book?
insurance doubled. How in the world? I mean, that's like a mortgage payment. It has to be with all
It honestly, it's insane. Yes. I
those.
can't even think about it. Thank goodness that if you have everything with one company, they give you discounts.
Thank God.
Our kids get great really good grades, so we get like a good grade discount and all. I'm like, what other discount do you have? Do you have discounts because I have so many?
You should. It should
Right?
be just like once you have so many, it just cuts off, you know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
you're at the
You're
max.
like, you're at a cap.
Yeah, exactly. Woo. But,
Yeah.
not just that, but just everything else that goes into that. So that's their ages now. What
Right.
were their ages when the adoption was finally finalized?
So their adoption has been finalized for 2 years.
Oh, 2, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had them for 6 months. They went back for 4 months and then they came to us. So Michelle was an eighth grader when they came to us, and she's a junior in high school now.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So it took about a year, I want to say maybe 13 or 14 months for their adoption. But again, their adoption was not easy. It could have very well gone quicker if other things and people had done things differently.
Right.
Yeah. So
Well, and I have to ask, so they have the other 2 siblings then?
uh-huh.
And are they able to see their other 2 siblings, or how does that
Yes.
work?
So I'll fill you in on this part. This is honestly one of the reasons why we stay in California. Well, first of all, those kids get to see their other brother and sister and their families that they're involved in. But my kids have two sets of aunts and uncles that live in the same area as us and are they have extremely healthy family relationships, extremely healthy family bonds. And so our kids get to have relationships with them and their cousins, and we spent Thanksgiving together 2 years ago. Like
Well,
they're
that's
all of us together. So
awesome.
those sets of cousins and uncles and there were 27 of us at my house.
What?
So my three kids are Mexican. And so they had never had an American Thanksgiving and neither had their family. So I did every American dish you could possibly think of. And then they brought Mexican food over. So it was kind of a swap.
Oh,
And it
what?
was amazing. Like, so we do things, I don't want to say all the time, but we do keep in touch with them. And we try to see them as much as possible. Their cousins come and have sleepovers.
Oh, that's
Um, yeah, it's really great. Hunter's family, so his biological mom passed away right before his adoption was finalized of a drug overdose.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
but when I got his information from the state after his adoption was finalized, there was an aunt listed in there who was willing to have contact with us about him. And so it took me a while. I prayed for a long time over contacting her, but I honestly feel like it's the best thing I ever did. I contacted her. She is amazing. So it was his biological mom's sister, and she
Okay.
has 3 kids. And they've come and spent holidays with us. They've spent birthdays with us. We go actually to the same church now as them. So
Wow.
yeah, Hunter gets to see his aunt and uncle all the time. And so those relationships that my kids have had, honestly, I had no intentions of staying here past Jeff's retirement, but my kids they have some amazing family members here. So that's what keeps us here for my kids.
Well, that's amazing, really.
Yeah.
And it's just great that you have this all-inclusive mindset, I think that's really your mindset really, Rachel, is and really you and Jeff both going into this whole thing really was the mindset of what was the best thing for these children that need
Absolutely.
home and that need a home. Like you told me on the phone the other day, you said, I still have my home ready in case there are kiddos, that need a placement, that need an emergency placement or something. So you're still always in that mindset of thinking about these kids that
Yep.
need more people like
Yep.
you,
We
basically.
always have an extra crib, extra set of bunk beds. It's in our shed back in the backyard. We always have tubs of clothes labeled by gender and size and blankets and
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's pretty incredible. And I have a really good friend that works for Sacramento County for Child Protective Services, and I talked to her about just the system and what was the need. What's the foster care need for homes? And she's like, I really can't give you just a fast fact because it's not that simple. She goes, if I have a newborn baby, I don't have any trouble finding a home. even if I have kids under the age of 2, I don't have trouble finding a home. But the
Yep.
older the kids get, and that becomes the challenge. And no, you can never have enough, basically. You can never have enough families ready to be able to take these kids. And because it's hard, like you said yourself, you let these children into your home, you care about them, you love them, you love on them for this certain time, and you have to take them back sometimes.
Yep.
And like you just shared, how hard that is.
It is hard, but you know what? Jeff and I both, we had to agree that we had to lean on God for that. Um, and I will tell you, taking more kids right in, it helped, because then
Yeah.
that was the time in our lives where we had 5 kids under the age of 5. So it kept me very busy. I went from having all the older kids to having 5 under 5. And so it's definitely different. There is definitely a stigma out there. I will tell you, I was one of those people. I was like, I don't want a teenager. You hear things about teenager. I don't want a teenager. And I am thankful that we prayed about that, because my Michelle she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. She never thought that she was ever going to go anywhere in life. School was not a priority for her. She'd been taking care of her siblings most of her life and just didn't think there was anything besides that. And she has made honor roll every semester that she's been in high school. She's a junior now. She has A's
Wow.
and B's. She has aspirations of joining the military like her dad.
Oh,
Um, and she wants to do something with the drug task force. She wants to try and get drugs off the streets.
wow.
So she's like, she knows what she wants. She's goal oriented. And man, when that kid has a goal,
That's
she's set. Yeah.
awesome. Well, I just, you know what? It's incredible, really, because and who better than her, right?
Yes.
To give her life in that way to try to help
Mhm.
other people who've struggled with an issue, I'm sure that
Yeah,
she watched firsthand
she did.
and
She's watched
experienced
her
that.
entire family crumble around her because of drugs and alcohol.
Right.
And she saw the changes. She's lived that life. She's lived in those neighborhoods. She's
Right.
dealt with those people, that struggle from addiction.
Yeah.
And so she wants to get back out there and she wants to help, but she wants to help, permanently. She wants to get drugs off the street.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it does. It's one of those things where we say it all the time, that it's great if a child can have, 12 people in their corner, that's fantastic. But if they
Mhm.
they really just need one, I mean, the truth of the matter is they just really need one person that really is the one that says you can do this and you can do
Yeah.
whatever it is that you want to do. And look at
Yeah.
now, I mean, your kids are blessed with this family and you're blessed by them.
Mhm. It
Pretty
really is
incredible.
like it's when people say it takes a village, like it truly is a village. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at my 6 kids and now the other families that are intermingled with our family because, we've taken these kids into our home, like our family exploded. And I'm so thankful that they get to have us, they get to have their biological families with those healthy relationships because ultimately my kids are never going to wonder where they came from. They'll
Right.
know where they came from and
Right.
they'll see how their lives have changed. Um,
Exactly.
and I'm so, so blessed to be able to, give that to them, give them those experiences, give them, the relationships that they have with us and with their other family members.
Right? And
Mm.
also just give them this incredible gift of just being a kid, you know?
Yes.
And
That's actually, it's crazy that you brought that up because Michelle, she's 18 and she's a junior. So she's got another year left of high school. And she wants to do college. She wants to enter the military as an officer. But she asked me and Jeff going into her junior year, she's like, do I have to move out when I turn 18? Do I have to move out to go to college? She's like, I really just want to come home to a hot meal and a place to do my laundry.
right?
And I was like, really? And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, she's like, I don't want to go. I never got to be a kid. And I was like, oh, sweetheart. I'm like, you don't have to go anywhere.
Right.
And in Mexican, I mean, her aunts are teaching me in the Mexican culture, generally the kids don't go away very often.
Right.
In that culture, they stay pretty close to home. So I told her, I was like, you don't have to go anywhere. My husband's like, no, when they're done, they're done. They're gone. And I'm like, the mom in me is like, no, it's okay.
I know. I know. Exactly. It's like Gary keeps telling me we need to like downsize our house because we just have Logan left and we have, all these bedrooms. And I'm like, not sure I'm ready for that. I mean, you never know,
No.
you know?
I told Jeff, I was like, I told him the other day, because we're gonna be 40 soon, like in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, your
And
baby.
I was like, if you think about this, like if each of our kids only had 2 children, that's 12 grandchildren.
Oh, man.
I was like, our houses are never gonna be small. Our vehicles are never gonna be sports cars. Like we
Nope.
are forever going to, yeah. It was like that was mind blowing to me. And he kind of stuck with it for a little bit. I was like, all right, we're moving on.
Right.
We're not talking about grandparents.
I know. You're like, I'm not ready for that. Yeah.
No,
You've got a
no.
long ways before that.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean, Hunter's not even in kindergarten yet. So,
Thank you. Like I told him, I was like, moving on. He's like, no, he could be a really young uncle and play with him. I'm like, no,
nope.
moving on. He actually told me the other day that he thinks that there's 2 more children in our future.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he thinks that Hunter needs a couple kids. We need some children between John and Hunter's age. As these older ones start to, he said, move on and move out,
Uh-huh.
going anywhere. We will see though. It's whatever God brings to us, I'm sure.
Oh. Well, listen, Rachel, we're out of time, but this has been a blessing. And I know that everybody that listens and or watches on YouTube is going to be blessed by your story, both what you and Jeff have done and your incredible family. And again, we'll post pictures on Facebook so that everybody can see
Absolutely.
just how amazing you guys are. But again, this has been a real pleasure, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank
And
you.
and I thank everybody for continuing to listen to Focus Faith Podcast and just continue to follow on Facebook so that you can see again the pictures, but also what is coming next. So thanks again, Rachel, and God bless to everybody that's listening.
Thank you.